Okay, perfect. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Let me move this up a bit. Okay, I think that's better. Can everyone hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Good evening, guys. Welcome to the District Attorney Debate for the 34th Judicial District. My name is Andres Carrillo, and I'm a member of We Fill in the Blank. Before we begin, I would like to invite you to take part in our conversation on Twitter by tweeting at WeFitB using the hashtag WeFitB34. Please stand and join me in reciting the pledges of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now for the Texas Pledge. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Please be seated. We Fill in the Blank is a nonpartisan, student-run organization dedicated to engaging the youth in their community. Over the past few years, we have hosted countless debates and forums, conducted exit polling, facilitated the Borderized Youth Symposium, and most recently, we have started the Breaking Apathy series, a series of events in which high school students teach elementary school students about the importance of being civically engaged. We would also like to recognize the candidates who participated in our candidate fair. Being that we are a nonpartisan organization, we would like to make it known that all candidates from all parties were invited. Our debates are known for employing the Socratic method. This method is a 10-minute one-on-one dialogue between the candidate and a moderator. Each candidate will be presented with the same initial question, and from there the moderator will walk through the candidate's thought process to make everyone better understand why the candidates think the way they do. While this is underway, the other candidates will be in a separate room to ensure a fair forum. After their participation in the Socratic method, the candidates will then participate in a town hall which consists of each candidate having the opportunity to answer questions from the audience. After this, each candidate will then deliver a 2-minute closing statement. In regards to the town hall, please write your questions on the question sheets provided along with the programs on your seats. I will pick them up throughout the debate. I will then submit them to our town hall moderators. We ask that audience questions are strictly relevant to the powers that a district attorney has. The two moderators here tonight are We Fill in the Blank members Ileana Flores Dumont and Alyssa Pitchcolin. We Fill in the Blank events such as today's debate are free to attend, but they are not free to put on. Sponsors and fundraising make it possible for us to do important work like this for the sake of the community. And of course, as a nonprofit organization, we rely on the help of all of you in the audience to support our operations and programs. If you wish to make a donation in the back of the room, outside the room, there will be volunteers who can collect your contributions today at the conclusion of this event. Thank you for helping us promote this wonderful organization. We would also like to state that we are simply here to educate the audience so that they may make an informed decision on behalf of the community. To that point, we absolutely welcome everyone here today. And we respect your right to have an opinion. However, you do not have the right to disrupt our event. We wish to hold a civil and respectful debate, and for the benefit of the people in this room, we ask everyone to behave respectfully, or you will be asked to leave the event. This evening's debate is over the district attorney position for the 34th Judicial District. I would like to thank each and every one of you candidates they're not here. I would like to thank each and every candidate for running, as this act shows that they each have a vested interest in the community. Not only this, but I would like to thank every member of the audience for also showing a vested interest in the community by educating themselves as citizens and voters. Thank you guys. That's it. So to start, we're gonna begin our one-on-one with James Montoya.
James Montoya was born and raised in El Paso. He attended SISD schools and graduated from America's High School. He was accepted into a highly competitive combined degree program at George Washington University in Washington, D.C., where he earned a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science and a law degree. While attending school in D.C., James worked as a classified information management analyst for the State Department. After earning his law degree, James returned to El Paso and began working as an assistant district attorney. Since 2014, he has been assigned to the Special Crimes Unit, which is responsible for prosecuting homicides, major violent crimes, and other complex criminal offenses that occur in El Paso. In that time, he has worked on over 100 homicide cases and prosecuted over 50 jury trials. James is proud to call El Paso home and regularly gives back to our community. Since becoming an attorney, James volunteered his time as the mock trial coach for America's High School. He has also volunteered as a commissioner for Emergency Services District Number 2 and served on the City of El Paso Charter Advisory Committee.
Thanks.
So our first question of the night and you'll have approximately 1 minute to answer this question.
Okay.
What would your top 3 priorities be as district attorney?
So it's a lot to answer in 1 minute, but my top priority is keeping El Paso safe. We're very blessed to live in a very safe community, and we're very grateful to our law enforcement officers for the hard work that they do, but that's half of the equation. A lot of people, if you watch Law and Order, you know that there's the police and the prosecutors, and you need competent, professional prosecutors to ensure that criminal cases are properly handled through the criminal justice system. And so my number 1 priority is ensuring that professionalism and that competence stays in the office. My second priority is ensuring and building upon the community's trust in our criminal justice system. Our ability to solve crime and prosecute crime is directly dependent on the community's trust in our institutions, and I think the District Attorney's Office has a big role to play in maintaining that public trust by ensuring that public officials, including police officers, elected officials, white-collar criminals are held accountable. I think that builds trust in our institutions. And my last priority is ensuring that small, nonviolent offenses are diverted away from criminal prosecution.
Okay, so first, for your first priority, what would you define as El Paso being safe?
Sure, I think El Paso being safe is ensuring that violent offenders are kept off the streets, that we're ensuring that those cases are moving through court quickly. I want to make sure that people that are getting released on PR bonds are the people that deserve PR bonds, while making sure that violent offenders, violent repeat offenders, repeat DWI offenders, those are the people that we need to be focusing our time on.
Could you define PR bonds?
Sure. So a PR bond or a personal recognizance bond is essentially when a judge allows someone out of jail on their own recognizance. And what that means is the person swears, I'm going to show up to court sometime in the future. And so a PR bond, there's no actual money that someone has to put up for that. So if someone is a $5,000 PR bond or a $10,000 PR bond, it's all the same, because all the person is saying is, I swear I'm going to show up. I think PR bonds are appropriate for minor, low-level, nonviolent criminal offenses where it costs taxpayers to put people in jail. And so I want to make sure that the people that we're putting in jail, we're willing to pay for. If a homeless person is sleeping, at a business place, I don't think that makes El Paso safer by putting that person in jail. And so that's what a PR bond is versus a cash bond or a surety bond, when someone has to pay of money to be able to get out of jail.
You mentioned that these PR bonds would be used for non-violent offenders,
Right.
Or low-level offenses.
Right.
Could you define the term of low-level offenses?
Sure. I think for misdemeanors, the crimes that I would consider not to be, the 2 misdemeanors that I consider violent or at least a threat to public safety are DWIs, assaults, and assault family violence cases. Those are the 2 that I think PR bonds are not necessarily good ideas on. They can be, depending on the person, because you can also condition a PR bond. So say someone for a DWI, they pay $1,000 to get out of jail, and then they're not being monitored at all. No one's watching it. With a PR bond, you can make sure that that person's reporting, that the person is taking a test, and so on and so on. And so that you can make conditions on a PR bond. That would be appropriate for those kinds of offenses. That would be appropriate for family violence offenses. But some of the offenses that come to mind that I think that I would consider nonviolent, low level, would be shoplifting, misdemeanor marijuana possession, criminal trespass, depending on the circumstances, graffiti, those kinds of offenses where it doesn't make sense to keep someone in jail for those kinds.
And what makes you believe that these PR bonds and these low-level offenses cause a huge impact in safety in our community?
Well, that's my point. I don't think that they do. I don't think those offenses, keeping those people in jail for low-level offenses doesn't make us safer. I think we spend money and resources on cases that might not necessarily improve public safety. I would rather my prosecutors spending their time on DWI cases, on family violence cases, on the cases where the public's safety is actually threatened by an offender's conduct.
And moving on to your second topic, you stated that ensuring and building upon the community's trust.
Sure.
What can you define as ensuring and building, and what does the community's trust look like to you?
Sure. So I think right now El Paso, they trust their law enforcement. I will tell you, here in El Paso, people are willing to report crime. People are willing to testify as witnesses, even against their friends and their family members. I like to tell people snitch here in El Paso. I've seen cases where the key witnesses are their friends or their family members. And it's very unusual here in El Paso. I mean, you look at other major metropolitan areas where people don't trust law enforcement, where people say, oh, I believe in street justice. People say, don't snitch. It's better to have someone else take care of it than go to the police. That is not an attitude we want here in El Paso. And it's not an attitude, I don't think we have that attitude here. And maintaining the public's trust, to me, I think people were really upset when this police officer was found guilty of raping a woman and got probation. People were upset by that. What people need to understand is a jury gave that officer probation, but we were willing to prosecute it. And so as long as we handle cases, I think the public's trust in our institutions are undermined when people feel like certain people are treated favorably. Like I said, elected officials, white-collar criminals, police officers, other public servants that people receive beneficial treatment because of who they are.
So what makes you believe that we need to build on that trust? As you stated that you believe El Paso has a high level of the community's trust.
So I think we need to build upon it. I will tell you one of the cases that I was most concerned about that I think hurt people's public trust was not prosecuting. There was a very blatant open meetings violation a few years ago where several members of city council met in public to discuss and deliberate on a topic of public interest. And it wasn't an official public city council meeting. And that case ended up getting declined for prosecution. And to me, I think that was a case that was appropriate for prosecution because to me, I could not have imagined a more blatant open meetings violation. I think that was a case where the public deserved a better explanation of why our office didn't prosecute. And so, and like I said, these cases involving police officers, I really think the public wants more transparency in the way that we handle them.
So moving on to your last priority, you stated small nonviolent offenses.
Right.
Again, what do you define as those small nonviolent offenses and would you or would you not prosecute those?
Sure. So I'll tell you the easiest one off the top of the head is misdemeanor marijuana possession. Any possession of marijuana under 4 ounces, that's a misdemeanor. And in my opinion, I don't believe jailing people for small amounts of marijuana possession makes us any safer. Locking someone up for having a joint, 2 joints, does not make us safer. And so that's a program. Right now there's a program in place, what's called pre-arrest diversion. And we call it the first chance program, where if it's their first time ever being in trouble, a police officer basically has this person sign a contract and they promise to show up, pay a fine, do some community service hours, and then the case is dismissed. And it's never on their record. Because they were never arrested, it's never going to be on the record. I think that's a really smart program. I think that's a program that I would like to expand, not just limit it to people that have absolutely no criminal history. I think we should be offering this program to anyone caught with a minor amount of marijuana. And then if it works out, we might be able to expand it to other classes of offenses.
Why do you believe that not prosecuting these offenses makes El Paso a safer city?
By not prosecuting them or not spending resources on them, here's the thing. Law enforcement, this is a zero-sum game. And what I mean by that is time and energy spent on some cases is time and energy that could be spent on on different cases.
And
so
that'll be that for this
Sure.
session. I know it was short. Thank you so much.
No,
for
I
your
appreciate it. Thank you
participation.
all.
Hello? Okay.
Roger Montoya was born and raised in El Paso, Texas, on the northeast side of town. Roger graduated from Cathedral High School in 1991, and he went on to the University of Notre Dame. Roger graduated from Notre Dame with honors, with a bachelor's degree in history and government as a double major. Roger then went on to the University of Texas School of Law in Austin, Texas, where he graduated with a law degree in 1998. Roger passed the Texas bar exam in November of 1998, and soon after he began working at the district attorney's office, in which he worked at the DA's office until November of 2002, when he opened his private law practice. Roger has helped El Paso families with criminal cases, civil matters, family law cases, probate matters, consumer protection matters, and other types of cases. Roger has taken over 80 cases to trial before a jury, and he has completed some appeals as well. Roger has been licensed to practice in the federal courts for 18 years, and he has tried jury trials in federal court as well as appeals. Roger has been married once, he is divorced, and he is a proud father of a little girl.
Good evening, my name is Iliana Flores-Juman. I'll be your moderator tonight. So the first question that we have for you is what would be your main 3 priorities as DA? And be mindful that you have about a minute to answer the question.
Thank you. My first 3 priorities as district attorney would be to make sure that I put together the best possible prosecution team to represent the people of El Paso, Hudspeth, and Culberson counties in court and criminal matters. And that would mean maintaining the employment of top-notch professionals, as the office has always done, in both the prosecution team and the investigatory staff. I would meet with the heads of law enforcement agencies, the sheriff, the various chiefs of police of the different police departments, in order to form and maintain a good working rapport between law enforcement agencies. And I would begin immediately to bring criminal justice reform to El Paso, Hudspeth, and Culberson counties. And criminal justice reform means a lot of different things, but I'll save that for the rest of my answers.
Okay, so my first question for you, in your first priority you said the best possible prosecution team. What would that look like to you?
That would look like people, assistant district attorneys, who are dedicated to the profession, who are dedicated to the highest ideals of the profession, most importantly for criminal prosecutors, dedicated to the prospect of achieving justice and not just convictions for conviction's sake.
What would you say those highest ideals are?
Honesty, integrity, dedication to justice for justice sake. Integrity meaning always doing the right thing even if no one were watching, although I will always be watching.
So what is this dedication? You mentioned dedication several times. What does dedication to the office look like to you?
To me, it means not just being a prosecutor from 8 to 5. Being a prosecutor means being available to the public at whatever hour that their services might be needed. So if showing up before 8 is something they need to do in order to perform their duties, I should expect them to be able to do that without being asked. Likewise, if staying after 5 is something that needs to be done in order to get the job done, I would expect that my prosecutors would do that. I would, of course, be leading by example. If I, as DA, have to stay after 5, I'll do so without any reservations.
Are there any other ways that you, as a DA, would make yourself available to the public?
Absolutely. I'm more than happy to have an open door so that people can address concerns with me. You know, I've had a great time going out into the public and canvassing and talking to voters on their front doorsteps, but I know I can't do that all the time, and especially if elected, I'll be expected to take care of my duties downtown and especially in court. So I will try to maintain an open door as much as possible, but also go out into the community to events like this in order to help educate and stay engaged with the public.
Okay, and is there any particular way that you feel like you ought to engage with the public? Like, what does that engagement look like?
That engagement looks like this forum, for example. I'm very happy to be here to help with the educational project of We Fill in the Blank. I'm very proud to be involved with your project. I know that the youth put this together, and I know that you've done an excellent job of it, and I want to make sure that I engage with the people of the El Paso, Hudspeth, and Culberson as much as possible through events like this, or going out to cultural events, meeting with community leaders, etc.
Okay, for your second priority, you mentioned meeting with heads of law enforcement. In what ways do you think that relationships with law enforcement need to be reformed, or in what ways would you interact with law enforcement?
Right, well, first of all, I want to be cordial and make sure that mutual respect is built so that the law enforcement agencies can have a good working rapport. I don't want some chief of police or the sheriff rolling their eyes at the thought of meeting with Roger Montoya. I want them to look forward to the experience from day one. And I want to try as much as possible to create a shared vision for what public safety would look like in the 34th Judicial District, the Tri-County area that my district will cover if elected. And in that regard, I want to make sure that when cases are presented to my office, that the law enforcement officers who are making those presentations can be confident that their cases will be taken seriously and with the utmost regard.
Okay, what makes you believe that relationships with law enforcement ought to be a second priority?
Well, I don't think it should be a second priority in terms of a lower priority. You asked me for 3 priorities,
Yes.
and I just listed them.
What I mean is, what makes you think that it would be a priority?
It's got to be a priority because I've had the experience of working as an assistant district attorney. As an assistant district attorney, it was my responsibility to work in cooperation with law enforcement at all stages of a case, from the time the case came in after an arrest, to reviewing the case for whether or not we were going to prosecute it, to preparing the law enforcement officers as witnesses before I presented them in court, and then presenting them in court as witnesses. And it is such a relationship that if there isn't a good working rapport, it can be a very difficult job for both the officers and the prosecutors.
How would you work to build such rapport with law enforcement?
First of all, by meeting with the leadership, and then I'd like to try to attend law enforcement meetings as well, shift meetings, to introduce myself to the officers, let them know who they're presenting their cases to at the top and at all levels. I want my prosecutors also to try to get out there and introduce themselves so that a face can be put to either the voice on the phone or the email message that somebody might receive. Communication is best when we know who it is we're dealing with.
Okay, and for your third priority, you mentioned reform. Can you elaborate on what you meant?
Thank you. Yes, criminal justice reform to me means making the process fairer, first of all, to vulnerable populations. For example, people of color have traditionally not necessarily been always treated fairly in the criminal justice system. Also, the mentally ill. I think it's a rotten shame that the largest facility in the county for mentally ill persons is the county jail. I think we should not warehouse our mentally ill at the county jail. I want to attend jail diversion meetings in order to work with the jail diversion team to transition mentally ill people out of the jail and hopefully reunite them with family. Failing that, then I want to have them living on their own while they face the justice system and with whatever services they might need. So that's going to require cooperation with Emergence Health Network and other agencies.
You mentioned increasing fairness. In what ways do you feel it needs to be more fair?
Well, for example, charging decisions aren't the same across the board. I've seen it with my own eyes. Okay, persons of color very often face harsher charges than persons with lighter skin. So I want to make sure that that is not happening in El Paso, Hudspeth, and Culberson counties to the greatest extent possible. I want to make sure that the police aren't making arrests that aren't appropriate, and I want to make sure that we as prosecutors are making appropriate prosecution decisions in a colorblind manner.
In reference to people with mental illness, you had mentioned jail diversion meetings. Can you define that for us, please?
Jail diversion meetings are meetings that are held on Thursday mornings at 11 o'clock, and they involve individuals from different agencies, the sheriff's office, the public defender's office, and may or may not include the district attorney's office. Under my administration, it would definitely include the district attorney's office. And it's for purposes of looking at cases of persons who are justice involved in jail who have a mental health diagnosis and how to deal with them appropriately.
Okay, why do you feel that attending these meetings would be beneficial?
I think it would be very beneficial to the individuals who are locked up in our jail with mental health diagnoses who don't belong there. And I think it would be very beneficial to the community to know that we're not just giving up, throwing our hands up and saying, well, we don't have another place for this mentally ill person. We're just going to go ahead and throw them in jail. I think it's better for the community to know that we are treating that vulnerable population with fairness and compassion.
And that's all of our time for this particular session. Thank you so much.
Just a reminder that next to your program, you have those question cards. If you guys could fill them out, if you want your questions answered during the town hall, just do them now. Get them.
This is Miss Yvonne Rosales. She is your candidate for district attorney. She has been a successful criminal law and family law attorney for the past 19 years, which includes nearly 4 years as an assistant district attorney. In 2016, she was a newcomer who received 49% of the votes for the district attorney against a longtime incumbent. She was born in El Paso and is a graduate of Austin High School, UTEP, with a BA in psychology, and St. Mary's Law School. In 2001, she brought her education back home to El Paso and began working at the DA's office. In 2005, she started her own law firm, which has remained open and successful to this date. Public service is vital to the success and growth of her community. She is a member of El Paso's Centennial Lions Club, president for 2 years, and they serve meals to soldiers from Fort Bliss at the annual Thanksgiving luncheon and host clothing and food drive. She serves as a mentor to young adults through the Project Future program and also to young children through the Pen Pal project.
She also serves on the Animal Advisory Committee. Her vision and goal when elected to be your district attorney is to have a positive effect on our community and to be the public servant that brings trust, honesty, transparency, and efficiency back into our political system. This is Ms. Seaver.
Good evening. My name is Eliana Flores-Dumont. I'll be moderating for you tonight. My first question for you is what, as DA, would be your top 3 priorities? And just be mindful that you have about a minute to answer this question.
Well, we need to implement the new policies and procedures that will take effect immediately. Make sure that my staff and administration feels comfortable and just get to know each other. We need to develop a family relationship within the office so that we can start working together for the good of the community. We need to make sure that our attorneys are treated with professionalism and respect, and I know that most of them have the training and experience to carry forward and bring the administration of justice into this community. I will value and count on their opinions and respect their choices that they make when they are handling the cases that are presented before them.
Okay, you said that you needed to implement policies immediately. Can you elaborate on what policies you mean?
Yes, currently there is a policy that says all family violence cases are going to be treated the same irrespective of a defendant's criminal history or lack of criminal history, and irregardless of whether a victim wants to drop the charges. I think there are cases that are very distinguishable. Some are more severe than others. Some is a push and a defendant has no criminal history, and then sometimes there are defendants who repeatedly are getting arrested for family violence. So the current policy of no dismissal or no deferred probation or no anger management classes for dismissal does not take those matters into consideration, and it's causing a backlog in the courts. So in order to expedite those cases that are really not harmful to the families, and where you have a victim that wants to have the cases dismissed, and then we need to allow the prosecutors to make those discretionary opinions and allow for the possible dismissal of a case after a defendant has done their community service, taken an anger management course, and the victim has expressed to the prosecutor that they feel comfortable and they're satisfied with the plea bargain that has been offered.
Okay, you mentioned distinguishable cases. Can you define what you would consider a distinguishable case?
Yes, as I just stated, there are cases where you have victims with bruises on their arms and you have a defendant who is repeatedly getting arrested for family violence. Well, that is not the type of person that you want to offer probation or that you would want to consider just dismissing just because the victim says they want to have the case dismissed. We need to, not just take into consideration what the victim wants, but we also have to make sure that we as the state are making sure that we are taking care of the victims. Sometimes we need to help those who don't have the strength and the courage to help themselves. And we, as licensed professional attorneys, need to have that responsibility and maybe sometimes help a victim make those decisions that maybe they can't make themselves.
How do you balance the needs of the victim with your responsibility in that seat?
As a prosecutor, you must first and always think what is just, what is fair. You need to seek justice above convictions. And again, you need to take a circumstance into consideration. When you have repeat DWI offenders who are getting arrested within a year or two of their prior offense, that's not somebody that you want to put back out on the street. And the punishment needs to be more severe than it was the first time. Kind of like when you're grounding your children and they get into problems. You need to judge and punish accordingly.
What would you define as just?
Again, you got to take matters into consideration. You don't want to divide a family, but you also need to protect somebody who is a victim of domestic violence. You don't want to punish somebody with a year of jail time when it's their first offense, but yet give 10 years of probation to somebody who's on their 10th DWI. Those are some of the problems that have been occurring in this present administration, and that's why we need to change the balance and give prosecutors the discretion to evaluate the cases and make those decisions.
So for your second priority, you mentioned getting to know your staff. Can you elaborate on what you mean by that?
Yes, I actually worked in the DA's office in 2001 and lasted, at the beginning of 2005, I went out into private practice. So I actually know a lot of the attorneys and a lot of the staff members that are presently there. And we've worked with each other on a daily basis for nearly 19 years. So I feel that I already know them, not just on a professional level, but also in a friendly capacity as well. And a lot of those people I still call friends. And on occasion we get together, we'll go have lunch. So a lot of the professionals that are currently working in the DA's office, I still consider friends. And for those people that may be new to the office, or what I consider new, people that maybe are staff and I don't get to see them on a regular basis, like the clerks and tech people, definitely I need them to know who I am, and I'd like to get to know them on an individual basis.
And what makes you feel that a closer relationship with your staff will help to make El Paso safer?
You have to have trust in the employees that you have. You know, if you've ever seen that show Undercover Boss, I'm not sure if any of you are familiar with that, but the CEO of the company actually goes in and sees what the problems are with the employees. And I think that if you understand and you have that open door policy and your employees feel that they can come and talk to you with any problems that may be arising, I believe that we will have their loyalty, and there's nothing that you can put above loyalty from an employee.
And then for your third priority, you mentioned that you want your attorneys to be treated with professionalism. Can you elaborate on that particular priority?
Yes, when you have these policies that say every case is going to be treated the same, every family violence, this is the plea offer that you're going to give. Don't take into consideration whether the victim wants to have it dismissed. Don't take into consideration that a person has never been arrested before. Don't take into consideration that maybe it's a law enforcement officer who will potentially lose their job if they plead guilty to a family violence case. You have to surrender your weapon at that point in time. So do we want to destroy somebody's career if the circumstances are not justified? And that's why I say you have to look at cases individually. Most of the staff has already been at the DA's office for a minimum of at least 3 years, from what I can gauge based on my communication with everybody over the last 20 years. So I know that people have the experience and training, and if they were just allowed to use the knowledge that they have based on life experience and based on their experience working as an attorney, I know that the district attorney's office is dedicated to serving the members of this community and keeping people safe.
And how would you allow these attorneys to better use their skills?
Again, if they have any questions, they can always come to me. They can always come to the supervisors that will be overseeing them. I see the elected official as the CEO of a company. When you have the right management in place, then everything else will fall into place. And I will be part of the interviewing process just to make sure that everyone's qualified. I will get to look at their resumes. This is a practice that I've been doing since 2005 when I hire my staff. And just making sure that we have the professionals from the CLEs coming into our office and keeping them updated on the new policies and procedures.
What does right or good management look like to you?
Good management means that you're involved with your staff. I'm not going to stay away from the courtrooms. My opinion is that a good CEO is down in the trenches with his soldiers, going in there to see what's happening, living day by day with them, potentially sitting side by side with them in a trial if necessary. And, you know, just talking to the court staff, asking the bailiffs, the judges, the court coordinators, the probation officers, the defense bar. If we all work together as a community to make sure that everybody is on the same page to achieving justice, then the criminal justice system will be a well-oiled machine.
What would you say composes that same page that everyone needs to be on? Like, what are the understandings that we need to get to mutually?
We need to be fair and objective and not just have a cookie cutter policy for everybody in place. We need to look at cases on an individual basis. We cannot, it's like judging teenagers. All 17-year-olds are crazy, you know, they're out of hand, they're out of control. No, we need to look at you and talk to you one-on-one to get to know you personally and individually. You can't judge every case just because, oh, it's a family violence, this is how you're going to treat it.
That's actually all of our time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I guess so. Just one last reminder, I will be picking these up going down the aisles during the next debate. So if you want to fill them out, this is your last chance. This is my slide. We're gonna have a
So, good evening, everybody. Miss Karen was born and raised here in El Paso, Texas. Her parents founded Destiny Family Christian Church Center in our home with just immediate family. Over the years, the church has touched tens of thousands of people in this community, providing inspiration and tons of food and support. Her parents instilled in her a sense of purpose in serving others. Her work in the church has instilled in her compassion and love for people, as well as a sense of altruism and desire to make the world a better place. Karen graduated from the University of Texas School of Law. She began her career in the District Attorney's Office in 2007. Since then, Karen has been licensed to practice law in California and has taken a myriad of challenges, working as an associate at a leading regional firm and drafting and reviewing entertainment contracts in Los Angeles. Everywhere she has practiced law, she has excelled and earned an excellent reputation. Currently, Karen is a staff attorney at the Combined Law Enforcement Association of Texas, or CLE, and representing men and women in the El Paso Police Department and the El Paso County Sheriff's Department, who are members of the union. In 2019, she took several criminal defense cases on the side pro bono to help those in need. Karen is married to Antoine Dykes, a distinguished armor officer in the United States Army who recently earned his Ranger tab, with whom she shares their beautiful 7-year-old daughter.
Hi, Mrs. Dykes. I'll be Alyssa Pitchcoin, your moderator for today. So the first question, and you'll have about 1 minute to answer this. What are your top 3 priorities that you would implement as a DA?
My top 3 priorities in spirit are justice, integrity, and fairness. And when it comes to policy, I believe that the top 3 things that I would do is, number 1, I would no longer prosecute minor marijuana offenses. We've seen that the 5 largest counties in Texas have decided to no longer prosecute those cases because hemp is legal in Texas now. And as such, they need to distinguish the amount of THC in the plant to determine whether or not it's legal or illegal. So as I said, the 5 largest counties in Texas, their district attorneys have deemed it in the interest of justice to no longer pursue those cases, and I would join in with that. Another thing that I would do right away on day 1 is I would formulate a conviction integrity unit. Okay? A conviction integrity unit is essentially a body of people from within the office to ensure that there are no wrongful convictions, that every prosecution is done at the highest ethical standard, and that if there is any evidence of wrongful conviction, whether it be in the past or present day, that those things would be taken up under that conviction integrity unit. We need to make sure that everyone can trust the process. And it needs to work not just for the wealthy, it needs to work for the poor. It shouldn't matter what your last name is. And a part of that is this conviction integrity unit. And finally, I would want to simply add a bit more nuance when it comes to the way that we prosecute domestic violence cases. Now, I don't want anyone to think that I'm somehow soft on domestic violence, because I know someone personally from my church who was murdered by her husband while they were in the midst of a divorce. So I know that this can be a very, very serious thing in our community, but I believe that we need to balance those serious cases and balance protecting victims with actually no longer victimizing families. Because
I'm sorry,
That's okay.
Going back to your first priority of no longer prosecuting minor marijuana cases, what makes you believe that no longer prosecuting these cases will make El Paso a safer city?
That particular thing is not specifically for that singular purpose, but for if we are no longer prosecuting those cases, we can take the resources, the few officers that we have on the ground that are now spending hours locking someone up, because when you're booking someone, you're taken off the street. So is someone having a minor amount of marijuana hurting El Paso? Not necessarily. But when you take that police officer off of the street because they're booking them into jail, now that officer is no longer available to help to protect El Paso from whatever dangerous criminal there might be.
So what would you define as a minor marijuana case versus a more major marijuana
Well,
case?
very simply, misdemeanor marijuana cases, or even a state jail case when it's simply because the marijuana has been processed into an oil as opposed to simply being the plant. Anything that's just a personal use case and not someone having a business, because obviously trafficking is its own separate offense.
Okay, and could you go back and define that state jail case term that you used?
Certainly. So the state jail felony is essentially a low-level felony that someone can still simply spend their time in state jail rather than having to go into a formal prison per se. But it's a higher level than a misdemeanor, but it's the lowest level felony case that someone can have.
So for your second priority, you defined as it was a conviction integrity unit.
Yes, ma'am.
So what would this body of people ensure? What does ensuring that no wrongful convictions come about look like to you?
Well, what it looks like is, I know many of us have watched CNN and we've seen some of the cases where someone's on death row and there's been evidence that they should be exonerated. Maybe, for example, a confession was obtained from a minor and there was no adult in the room and there was no lawyer in the room. Well, if a confession is obtained from a minor without legal representation or a parent, then that confession necessarily must be thrown out, right? But if that confession is then utilized in a trial that ultimately leads to the conviction of this minor, that's an example of something that was done in error and it was wrong and it was a violation of their constitutional rights. So when you're talking about wrongful convictions, you're talking about a conviction that has been gained because of the violation of someone's constitutional rights. Now, of course, sometimes we see things on the news and we're like, this person is definitely guilty, right? But there's some things that are happening behind the scenes, and you want to make sure that if there's someone who is having their rights violated, then they could be violating my rights. They could be violating my loved one's rights. And we just want to make sure that it's fair and that it's right.
And what does fair and right mean to you? A lot of people have different definitions of that.
Well, I think they say there's like an 80-20 rule, right? I think at large it's even deeper than that. What is fair? I think it's, for the most part, it's obvious to us, right? It's not treating one group of people differently from another group of people. It's not someone going into one courtroom with one prosecutor and getting a completely different result from going into another courtroom with another prosecutor, even though they have the exact same charge and very similar underlying facts, right? It's that the public, because at the end of the day, it's about the public trust, that they can trust that no matter who the person is, if they're charged with a certain offense, that their constitutional rights will be protected, and that person, if they are convicted, that it's going to be a conviction that won't be overturned through an appellate procedure.
And what does trust with the public look like to you?
Accountability and transparency. At the end of the day, I think we all know what trust is can you believe what the person is saying? Can you believe that the process is fair? Can you know that if your son or daughter were accused, that they would be treated correctly and that their constitutional rights would not be violated? On the other hand, if your son or daughter were a victim of a crime, can you know that the office would take that thing seriously and make sure that your son or your daughter received justice?
And how would you make sure that this accountability and transparency gets through to the public?
Part of it is the conviction and integrity unit. Another part of it is doing things like this. What if we didn't just come and open up ourselves to the public when we were running for office? What if when we're actually in office, we opened ourselves up for questions and we explained decisions that we made? If we were going to prosecute a certain case, why? If not, why not? So that the public could understand that there is a method to what's going on, and that method could be depended on for future cases.
Okay, and your last priority was nuance in prosecution. Could you go more into detail about what you mean by that?
Absolutely. I actually know a young man who graduated from this very school who had a girlfriend who was bipolar. And we know that mental illness is a very serious thing, and I'm not trying to take it lightly. But they were having an argument, and during that argument, she decided that she didn't want him to leave the house. So she sat on his car and said, "I'm not going to let you leave." So what the young man did was he took her, picked her up, and he moved her, and he drove away. Later, he finds out that she subsequently called the police and claimed to have been abused. And on the report, it basically mentions there was some redness on her arms. So he was charged with domestic violence. He was about to enter into the military. That opportunity was taken away. He had other things that he wanted to pursue for his future that put on pause. And now he was drugged through, not only did he get arrested, not only did he spend time in jail, but he began to be drugged through this criminal justice process for 2 years. Finally, they realized that the person who had complained on him, the complaining witness, aka victim, had moved out of town, was no longer available, and they realized that there was no evidence. And so they eventually dismissed the case, but that's after 2 years of potential that has been lost.
So what makes you believe that this nuance problem should be such a high priority over, let's say, any other issue?
Well, I think the fact of the matter is that it's taking up resources. If you talk to people that know, the domestic violence court is currently backlogged with, I think it's even thousands of cases, that we are bringing people through this process and dragging victims through this process, where every time there's a court case, there's a setting, the victim has to come and be available, and we're dragging it out. It's not only hurting the actual court process, it's hurting victims as well. And we're technically ruining people's lives. When you think about the fact that we want to bring large companies to El Paso, like Amazon and the like, to hire our people, well, none of our people are going to get a job if all of them have records for false accusations and they've been wrongfully brought through that process.
All right, and that'll be it for this session. Thank you so much for your participation. As we bring out the candidates